Welcome, everyone. My name is Lauren Osowski. I'm a Senior Project Manager here at ProLiteracy, joined by my colleague Danielle Callahan today, and also our presenter, Emma Schreiner, who's going to be talking about goal-focused individualized lessons for high-level English language learners. We're very happy to have you here today. Go through these next couple slides of housekeeping items as people are coming in and getting settled. Next one. At the bottom, or maybe the top, depending on your Zoom, you'll see the Zoom controls. Please use the chat to introduce yourself, share links and resources with the group, or also ask questions of the group of your fellow attendees. Use the Q&A if you'd like to ask questions of the presenter. You can put those questions into the Q&A at any time, and we'll get to them at the end of the presentation. We've reserved some time for that. It helps if you put your questions into the Q&A so that we can better track those questions and make sure we don't miss them and they don't get buried in the chat. Next one. We are recording today. We record all of our webinars, and we will share a link to the recording with everyone within a couple of days after the webinar. Hopefully we'll get that email out to you later this week or the beginning of next week with a link to the recording and the slides. In addition, there will be also a webinar summary sheet, a transcript of the chat and Q&A, a certificate for those who are attending live today. There will also be information about the scholarship, membership that we're offering, and an email will go out separately with links to the coaching sessions. Danielle will also be putting all those links into the chat during the presentation. Next one. So what are those small group coaching sessions? A couple weeks after the webinar, we like to hold a small group session with up to 12 people to talk more about the content from the webinar. It's an opportunity to ask questions of the presenter and really dig in a little deeper on the subject, things that you may not be able to do during the actual presentation today. This is not a recap of the actual webinar, but instead it's an opportunity to really discuss those issues you might be facing incorporating what you'll learn today into your classroom, or what you may have seen or experienced in the past and really share with your fellow colleagues around the country. Next. Some other resources that we have for our participants in this Teacher Training Plus project are a scholarship and membership. The scholarship is available to anyone who participates. The application link is here, and Danielle will be posting it into the chat. You can apply for up to $1,000. It's approximately $900 in materials, and then covering shipping, handling, and taxes. You can get classroom sets, such as Laubach Way to Reading, Journey to Success, Math, HiSET, GED books, lots of ESL books, all from our sister company, New Readers Press Publishing. The membership is an individual membership to ProLiteracy for anyone participating in these webinars. This will give you access to additional member benefits, such as expanded course offerings and education network, and access to our publication notebook that we offer. So I encourage you to check out those links. And if you have any questions, you can always reach out to us. Danielle will be sharing those in the chat, and also they'll be sent with all of the webinar recording follow-up information. Next one. All right, now I'm going to pass things over to Emma. We're very excited to have Emma joining us this year as part of the Teacher Training Plus project to talk about high-level ELL students. Take it away, Emma. Thanks.
Thank you, Lauren, and thank you, Danielle. Hi, everyone. My name is Emma Schreiner. It's so wonderful to see so many people joining from all over the state, so thank you for that. So I'm the Student Volunteer Coordinator at Literacy Volunteers of Rensselaer County, but we've expanded, so we're serving Albany County too. So I've previously worked internationally with English language learners. You can read the little bio, I won't read it out. Essentially, this webinar offers my experience and my strategies things that have worked for me, I'd really love for you throughout the webinar to post in the chat, to ask questions, raise your hand, which I think is at the bottom of your screen, or depending on your device, maybe at the top. Danielle and Lauren will, share information and pass the questions on at the end. So I believe everyone has something really important and valuable to say. So please do engage in the discussion, and yeah, I will start. Thank you. So I will run through the agenda so that we're all clear on what we'll be covering today. So we'll understand why goals are central to high-level English language learners, how working towards goals can have a direct impact for learners in their community, how to plan a lesson with the learner's goals at the center of their instruction. And I've actually developed 2 lesson plans. I hope we get through both of them, maybe just one, but you'll have access to both of them. And then some resources and questions. And again, I really encourage you to type in the chat so that we can discuss, answer questions, ask questions towards the end. So I wanted to go through what is a goal. I just took this from an online search. This is not my definition, but I thought it would be helpful to understand what goals are. So a person's ambition or effort, an aim or a desired result. So many of you who work with English language learners will often hear, I want to learn English, but it's just so broad and so general that we can really separate those into short and long-term goals. So we have some long-term examples like obtaining citizenship, improving employment outcomes, maybe buying a house, obtaining a GED or going to college. And then we have some short-term examples like conversing with their child's teacher, being in control of finances, and understanding health insurance plans. I mean, maybe as you've heard, I'm not from the US, and sometimes that terminology is really new to me, and I really think it's it's a really important goal for many. And it's and I did also want to mention that all goals are important. So why set goals? Sometimes it can feel like we're gathering materials as instructors and we're not always entirely sure of the direction that we're going. So setting goals keeps that focus between the learner and the student. And I mean, what I really love about our organization is that we adopt, and many other organizations too, is we adopt that kind of idea of a partnership between the learner and the student. And it's not sort of the instructor teaching the student and then ending with that. So if anyone could just type in the chat, maybe some goals that their learners have, maybe if you yourself is a language learner, what is it that you really want out of language instruction? So I'm just going to give it a second and I'm going to have a look in the chat. Please do write in the chat. I would love to hear about any goals that your learners have had, maybe learners for you. Donna, yeah, GED completion. Yeah, that's a really big one. Communicating with children's teachers, vocabulary. Yeah, precisely, especially with higher level learners, they sort of get to a point where they need to be accessing a range of materials, which we'll also cover later. Scheduling appointments. Yeah, oh, you guys, there are so many, so I'm going to go through the odd few. Yeah, reclaiming speaking skills they had when their kids were at home. Yeah. Citizenship, driving. I've seen an uptick in driving license tasks as well. Thank you so much for writing in the chat. It's really helpful for me to see these kind of goals and then and sort of develop sort of strategies to address these goals. Yeah, absolutely. I can see Kate has written about translating those educational training certificates. Great, thank you for that. So I'm going to move on. So I'll briefly review SMART goals. There was a webinar yesterday, I believe. Danielle will correct me if I'm wrong, about SMART goals with basic literacy learners. So I do really encourage you to go and check that out and see what other presenters are doing. And you can type in the chat to Danielle now, and she'll point you in the right direction. So I mentioned before that goals are often really broad, they're not focused. So developing SMART goals, so SMART being an acronym, we can really refine what a learner wants and needs. So with high-level English language learners, students are often able to express these needs and desires. So please do spend the time reviewing what they really want out of instruction. So it's preferable to obviously do this at the start of instruction, but it is absolutely fine to, visit that right in the middle of instruction and make sure that we're always revisiting those SMART goals. So I'll very quickly go through. So goals need to be specific. They need to be targeted. So think about who, where, what, when, why. So I want to learn English, or I want to speak English fluently, it's not specific enough. So, maybe I want to be able to have a conversation about my neighborhood with a neighbor. They need to be measurable. Make sure you can measure progress. So I will know I have achieved my goal because, and so on. They actually know if they've achieved it. Attainable. So we're making sure the goal isn't too challenging, but it is within reach. Often learners will choose very broad goals and then they become disheartened because it's too overwhelming. The time period is too long, which I will move on to on time specific. The goal needs to be relevant. It should be absolutely important within the learner's life, within the learner's community, their direct needs within their family life. And time specific. Please don't make a goal for years' time. Make those into small, shorter, manageable goals. So I wanted to mention at this point, often within my organization, we will give learning plans to students based on interviews and assessment. So honestly, a lot of the time, I will say that when that sort of partnership is built between the instructor and the student, that's when the goals really come out. So really do spend that time, speaking, developing that relationship, because that's where, you'll find out what the needs and the goals are of your student. Okay, so I'm going to give you just a second to type in the chat. This can be about you, this can be about a learner, this can be a made-up one, but I would love for anyone to think of a SMART goal. So if you can type in the chat a SMART goal with these points in mind, I'll give you just a minute. There's no right or wrong. I won't be reading them out. I just want to have a quick look so that other people can understand what maybe a SMART goal is. And if anyone has any better definitions as well, please do feel free to write in there. I'm not, this is not I don't know everything about SMART goals or goals. So, we learn from others. So please do type in the chat what a SMART goal could be. So I'm just reading through them now. Great. Yep. I'm seeing about job interviewing, communicating. Yeah, I love the one about 10 job-related words. Graduating, how will I know? Yeah. Filling out a job application. I like it. One paragraph. Yeah, exactly. So I can see that a lot of these are specific, they're measurable. Yeah, I'll know I've passed the citizenship test because, yeah, exactly. They're attainable, they're not really long, they're not long-term ones. Yeah, I'm seeing lots of numbers, which is great. Time specific as well. Wonderful. I'll give you just a couple more seconds. conversation, yeah, with the family and friends. Yeah, and someone has mentioned about, I will also mention shortly about confidence. So a lot of adult learners really feel embarrassed or shy when they are learning a language, and yeah, that can really hinder them. Yep, I'm seeing it in speaking with parents in informal settings, understand them, have them understand me for sure. Great. Okay. I do like to give just a second. I'm trying not to speak too much and give a couple of minutes break. Okay. So maybe as you know, teaching adults is very different to teaching children. They've got responsibilities, they've got life experience, but as you know, some of our participants had mentioned, they lack confidence and they can become very shy when it comes to language learning. So, and this is regardless of, background. So I learned a language as a child and I feel like I just learned it so easily. I never worried about what anyone thought. And then when I learned another language as an adult, it was always, oh, what do people think of me? And there's no need to feel that way because people don't, judge in that way at all. So you want the learner to ask themselves, why is this important? Why am I learning this? Why is this important to me? How does this impact my life and my family? So I've just put a few strategies here, sort of to meet those needs, to build confidence and give them the realization of the power that they have in the language learning process. So we should be offering choice to meet goals. I've been to lessons and I've given instruction and students have said to me, "Oh no, Emma, I don't want to learn that today. I want to learn something different." So, I've understood that learning and teaching can also be repositioned where the student is being given choice. They are making a decision on how they want to learn, what they want to learn. Maybe they've had a full day of work and they don't want to be reading, but they want to be listening and talking. So think about offering choice to meet those goals. So there's a lot of educational theory on learning, where learning takes place, and more often than not, it takes place in the context in which a person exists. So the materials in which they're learning, they need to make connections with their real life. So whether that's family life, community life, personal life, school life, make sure that all that learning is relevant. If you have a group setting, great. Collaboration is a really wonderful way. It builds confidence. People are able to help each other. I mean, within our organization, we have group instructor training, and with that training, the collaboration side of the learning process is a really wonderful one, and it's the way that learners can help others, and they have that support around them where there's less stress placed on a particular student. So collaboration is really a great opportunity to engage in discussion. And I don't know why I put this one last because I think it's probably one of the most important, but feedback. Feedback at every stage is so important in learning. So you can look back on how your lessons have progressed. The student can see how they have sort of developed, things they've achieved, things they've worked on. So I'm receive from.
Emma, your sound cut out there just for a minute.
Oh, okay.
You're good now.
Okay. It was the most important one as well, feedback. So I'll just go back to the feedback section. So one of the most important um, parts of the learning process is feedback. So feedback at all stages, and it doesn't even need to be it doesn't need to be a report card or anything like that. It can be, look, we did great with this today. I can see that we can do some more work on this. Or remember when we struggled to use this kind of language point. Now look at where we're at. And again, with the high level language learners, you're able to have those conversations and really sit down and collaborate and look at how we're progressing. And I do want to make a point here that all all feedback is important. It can be, yeah, that's great. It's, we often hear from our learners. I heard a story recently where a student had said, oh, they say I'm doing okay, but how am I doing okay? So it's really important to explain how the student is doing, whether it's a challenge or a success. So before I move on to sort of the lessons instruction, I did want to offer some tips on lesson planning with the goals of a high level student in mind. So as we know, we should be meeting needs with personal desires, needs with personal desires. I think it's really important to access a wide range of resources, blogs, news, radio, podcasts, poetry. And with that, using different accents, different types of resources, different types of materials to really sort of broaden their understanding of the speakers that exist within the US. And I'm going to stop there and I'm going to have you please write in the chat, what kind of resources do you use with your higher level language learners? So I'll give you a minute to write in the chat. What kind of resources do you use with your high level language learners? Great. I'm going to steal all of these resources, by the way, if you don't mind, because these look great. So I just really quickly saw someone ask what needs and desires are. So, for example, a need could be, I need to be able to fill out a job application. I need to understand how to read the labels on a medicine bottle or the instructions for my bank account, for example. I'm struggling to think of examples now. A desire could be something as simple as like, I really want to learn how to read poetry in English and really understand it. So it's not, it's not like a service need that's required, but perhaps a hobby. Yeah. So I'm going to just have a look through these resources. I've seen someone's put, what do you mean by higher level? So where English language proficiency is perhaps intermediate, upper intermediate, advanced, those where they've acquired a level of language, which means they can, integrate into society, but they do want to still advance those speaking, reading, writing, listening skills. So this is a way we can do it. Yeah, novels, GED prep books. GED prep books have a lot of difficult vocabulary in them. And sometimes the word problems are really quite, they're quite complex. TED Talks, I love TED Talks. Yeah. Story sharing, wonderful idea. Books, news for you. Excellent. Yeah, so I'm for sure gonna take some of these materials. I'm glad to see some BBC Learning English, but I'm biased, I suppose. Great. Yeah, lots of resources. And I've just seen that Lauren's going to share that transcript as well. So wonderful. So thank you for that. So we can also expand sort of vocabulary found in different sources. So maybe that's relating to academic literature and formal literature, blogs, descriptive narratives. So specific vocabulary is found in certain places. So maybe with expanding that vocabulary, we could start with sort of identifying an issue and then go on to explaining it and describing it. So this could be about speaking about their community challenges when we're speaking about working to build understanding on complex issues. And again, we're making things relevant, making sure that we're incorporating skills that are used in the workplace. So a note on the workplace, a major goal is having, is gaining employment. So understanding vocabulary, language, and skills used in the workplace, it can be the difference in feeling confident, taking on extra roles, responsibilities in employment. So making that learning specific to the learner's employment is really important too. And again, this is keeping focus and relevance as well as that progression of skill. So I'm going to ask people if they can write in the chat. I can see loads of resources now. So if I can ask people to write in the chat, has anyone worked with a learner where they've tried to improve their job outcomes? How did you go about it? Any like what kind of materials did you use to help them at work? So I'll give just a moment for that. Yeah, soft skills. Can't believe I've missed that off. Perfect. Yeah. So I can make a point about soft skills in the question section. Thank you, Christy. Role playing is wonderful. Mock interviews. Yeah, and from a cultural point of view, we need to be making sure that learners understand sort of the norms and expectations. Yeah, working on vocabulary for soft skills, absolutely, because some of the soft skills are quite difficult to explain unless they're shown as well. Great. Oh, I've not heard of this ONET. Yeah, practice questions and answers. Good. Yeah, wow. You have so much to share. Thank you. Fantastic. I'm seeing a lot of role playing, a lot of hands-on practice. Yes, workers' rights. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. That's great. Again, if nobody objects, I'd love to steal a few of those resources. Okay, so confidence and self-advocacy. Learning with the student's goal in mind can result in huge gains in confidence, in them being able to advocate for themselves, for them being able to advocate for their family members, other people within their community. So all victories should be treated the same, with the same importance. But a few benefits of goal setting as a part of the language learning process can be translated into, outside of the classroom, into their community, into employment. So this time I'll put feedback first. So continuous feedback and praise in the classroom. Again, it's occurring inside the classroom and it translates outside of the classroom. Goals allow you to show a progression of skills. So you can see it in your lesson planning and you can see it, the student can see how well they're doing, topics they need to work on, and really it can be a really important thing for a learner to see, look, I'm making gains. When we sort of achieve a higher level of language proficiency, if any of you are second language speakers, you can often sort of hit a wall and you You feel like, oh, I'm not really making any progress. But to have goals and to track them, you can really see how well a student is doing. So if you wanted to let me know if you agree or disagree in the chat, that would be wonderful. So focused lessons lead to victories in the workplace. For example, being able to confidently communicate with a customer or helping a child with homework. I've heard so many stories from learners, from their family members, and who will tell us, oh, they went to the shop and felt confident to buy something or to order something or to make a doctor's appointment. So it really is important to set those goals. I'm just checking the chat. Yeah, I have a couple of agrees, which is great. Of course, you're welcome to disagree with me. That's fine. That's fine as well. So in terms of self-advocacy, when a learner is able to communicate about their own needs, they're also able to build others and help others within their sort of immediate neighborhood. So that if I know how to access a service as an English language learner, I can also support others in accessing whether it's a language learning service, whether it's a hospital service, medical service, anything like that. So I'm just going to jump into the chat, see if anyone, excuse me. Oh, I love that. Linda Feldman, thank you. Actually, she's one of my esteemed colleagues. I was going to say, have learners document small victories. Wonderful. A really great idea that goes into everyday conversation. Fantastic. Absolutely. Okay, so I'm going to offer two. We can go a little quicker through it, so I can go through both instructional plans. So, plan being the operative word. I think it was Lauren on Tuesday. She gave the perfect analogy. If you forget to take, I'm sorry, I'm stealing this from you, Lauren. If you forget to take a shopping list with you, you still have an idea of what you need. So you don't need to stay entirely on track. Just speaking about this lesson plan, it could be one lesson. I'd recommend longer. It could be 3, it could be 4. Have the learner choose how long this lesson should last. If you feel like if it's too easy, then you can move on onto maybe more difficult work. Maybe they're producing more language. So the choice is really yours and your learners and how you both feel that you're doing. So while I'm going through the plan, I would love for people to put in any alternative activities that could be used instead of mine. I absolutely don't mind. I'm always open to new activities and different ideas. So I learn something every day from someone about an idea that they have for a lesson. So my first instructional plan, the overarching goal that the student wants to work as a teaching assistant at a local school. So I'm narrowing that goal down to understanding the job of a teaching assistant. So when we're starting our lesson, we're doing a warm-up. We don't want to overwhelm the learner. We want an opportunity to elicit prior knowledge and introduce vocabulary words. So I'll just give you a second to have a read. So I've suggested a brainstorm here, a mind map, brainstorming some words, thinking about synonyms, maybe even antonyms, and maybe discussing how the student shows these qualities. So here, this will guide what language do they know, what vocabulary could they work on. You could even have a look at a job description online if there are any job postings. So one of my favorite resources, which is also the sister company of ProLiteracy, I found this wonderful activity. It's a reading. It's a blog piece about a teacher shortage. So I'm just going to share my screen. I'll try not to switch back into too much. Okay, so this is a really wonderful article about the teacher shortage, about how the Oklahoma school district would like unlicensed teachers, teaching assistants to join their school district. And what I love about News for You is you can change the text size, which is really important for a lot of our learners, and you can listen. So having a student listen to the story instead of listen to the story instead of reading it, it kind of reduces that pressure. So um, throughout the story, there's lots of vocabulary, key vocabulary that comes up. You can go through this at a pace that is entirely your choice and your learner's choice. For a high level English language learner, this could be quite a good level. So I would definitely, take it slowly, but definitely include comprehension, find key vocabulary. How is this relating to the student? How is this relating to their goal of becoming a teaching assistant? So I won't stay on the website for too long. And I've also linked that in the resources. So you don't need to worry about writing down any links right now. I'm going to jump back. I promise not to keep jumping. Can be. There we go. So then we could move on to a second activity. And by the way, activity one, it could last as long as you need, okay? So please don't feel like this all needs to be done in a lesson. It doesn't. So one thing with high level English language learners, you still need to incorporate the language objectives. So it's not just reading and then not developing those maybe more complicated grammatical points, maybe idiomatic language. So I've just added reviewing persuasive language. If they've not studied persuasive language, you could do the persuasive language first. But then we could form an opinion about the article using language to persuade, maybe using that language to persuade to explain why the student would be a good teaching assistant. So I'm going to jump into the chat because I see the numbers increasing. Yeah, I see people have put in some other links to other resources. Yes, Eileen, it is. You can search by topic. You just type in your keywords. So just to reiterate, really important to incorporate language objectives when teaching high-level learners. So as you can see, these activities are scaffolded, so they're becoming a little bit more difficult. A bit more of the responsibility is being put onto the learner. So as a reflection or a production piece, you could say, maybe they could produce a short written or an oral piece explaining what a teaching assistant does, what qualities are needed according to their knowledge and the article. So you can really have this as long or as short as you need, but please make sure that if you're setting a production piece, make sure that this is answering your objective. Make sure that they're using persuasive language, they're referring to the article, and they're using maybe the vocabulary words that were used in the warm-up. You really want your lesson to sort of run a full circle. Again, I'm not saying this is exactly how you should do it. I'm just giving some ideas. Also, I do really enjoy lesson planning. So if you would like, I can just include it anyway. I have lesson planning templates and things like that. Some people don't like to lesson plan as much as I do. As fully, and that is absolutely fine as well. There's absolutely no need to feel compelled to, write so much in your warm-up and your scaffolded activities and your reflection piece. So I'm going through another instructional plan. This is the final one. Again, feel free to offer different activities. I'm always open to listening, to using different ideas. So this person's overarching goal, they wanted to obtain US citizenship. So this focus is understanding rights and duties as a citizen. Um, and I'm actually studying for citizenship at the minute, so I do really enjoy learning about all those rights and responsibilities. So for the first, I began with question and answer cards. If you work as a group, you could find someone who relating to a an experience in the US, for example, find someone who has visited Washington, D.C. And that can just really sort of set a tone for the lesson. Or it could just be a one-on-one asking about experiences in the US. I do want to say before I go any further, please use resources that are already available. There are methodologists that have spent and are paid a lot of money to make these lessons to on news for you on all the resources. So do take advantage. You do not need to create something from scratch. A lot of the information is out there. And with my resources that I've linked at the end, I can say they have comprehensive lesson plans there already. So yeah, please don't feel stressed or burnt out scrambling for resources. So to start with activity one, it's just a very it's a visual activity, so looking at images showing life in the US. We're eliciting existing vocabulary, and we're also teaching new vocabulary based on the photos. So, I mean, I've just given a few examples, but feel free to add your own. So I'm just going to have a quick look in the chat to see if anyone has. Okay, I'm seeing a yes, the lesson plan. Great. So yeah, using photographs. We are, big supporters of using imagery, using photographs, take photographs to describe the reality of their life within the US. There's always something important they can say in the citizenship interview, the naturalization interview, or within a lesson about citizenship, and you can relate those photos to vocabulary too. So I will quickly jump on to the USCIS website. They have some wonderful, wonderful resources available. So give me a second. Okay, so this is just an example of some of the information that some of the resources that USCIS have. I could be here all day showing you their website, but this is just a little reading comprehension. What I really like about this particular activity is the questions, although they answer the text, it's a reading comprehension, they are also questions found in the civics test which is taken. So again, it's nicely laid out. You can go, if this lesson is about rights and responsibilities, maybe you could separate into a column of what are your rights as a US citizen and what are your duties or responsibilities as a US citizen. And this really prepares them for, if these are my rights and responsibilities, then we're understanding what kind of questions could be asked in the exam. So yeah, I really do enjoy these resources. They're great. I'm going to jump back onto the PowerPoint. That's the last time I switch, I promise. And then a reflection, creating an I can and I must. So this is differentiating modal verbs of ability and imperatives, things you must do, stating the rights and the responsibilities that a US citizen has. So yeah, if anyone has any other ideas, please do share, please do ask questions, write in the chat. But I hope that these materials are useful to you. And again, there is no time limit on how long a lesson should take. That is really about the partnership that you and your learner and what their focus is that lesson. So this is the final page where I'm going to show you resources. A special shout out to, a special shout out to We Speak NYC. It's a really wonderful website with lots of, they have like conversations, everyday conversations about challenges that immigrants may have within the US, about their experiences. And I absolutely love it because all speakers are second language speakers, and there are a variety of accents, and it's just a really representative website. So I do highly recommend all of them, but a special love for We Speak NYC. Okay, and I'm going to pass it over to Lauren and Danielle. Thank you so much for listening. I hope that you have, yeah, you've got something from the webinar. And yeah, I'll hand you over to Lauren.
Thank you, Emma. This was really informative. A lot of great information about setting goals, especially targeted at that high level student, where goal setting is a different activity than it is at that lower level. Thank you. So I want to invite everyone to put some questions into the Q&A. We've got a few in there. So while people are typing, if you want to move to the next slide, Emma, we'll just remind you of a couple of things. As part of this Teacher Training Plus project, we have a few more upcoming webinars. There will be 3 webinars in this series for Emma. The next one will be in January and the final in March. So go ahead, you can sign up for those now and book that space right in your calendar. And then also we have our other tracks for the project. We have 2 webinars next week, one for workplace literacy, which should be really exciting, especially for high-level ELL students. And then we have an HSE webinar next week as well. And then we have math coming up as well, everyone's favorite topic. So you can go ahead and register for those on our website, or Danielle will be sharing those links into the chat. Next slide. Also, remember those coaching sessions that we've talked about? We've had some great discussions and resources sharing going on in the chat. Talk about lesson planning and specific goal setting, SMART goals for students. So sign up for those coaching sessions so you can take a deeper dive into those topics with Emma and other educators from around the country. We also have the links here for our membership application and scholarship application that you can fill out as well for yourself or your organization. Those links will be in the chat. They'll be with all of the follow-up materials as well. Danielle is also going to put the evaluation for the webinar into the chat so that you can fill that out, give us feedback so that we can prepare even more great material for you next time. All right, so let's move into the chat, to the Q&A now, and talk about some of these questions. So our first one here, Emma, is if you can talk about the difference between goals and objectives.
So how I would understand it is goals are those overarching themes, the things that a learner really wants. An objective, I would relate more to a lesson plan where you want a particular group or section of lessons going. So that objective could be a language objective. I don't know, I can use persuasive language in order to speak about my role as a teaching assistant. That's how I would differentiate goals and objectives.
Yeah, thanks. Do you have any suggestions for how to get honest feedback from a learner who is very shy and eager to please, not so sure she's really satisfied with our lessons and how they're progressing?
Yeah, that is a really good question because culturally, sometimes it's a norm, not, you don't question a teacher, you don't, ask, or it's, how was the lesson? Yeah, it was great. And it's not necessarily honest, but it's, there's that cultural difference sometimes. As I said to begin with, really develop a relationship. You don't have to share personal information about you, but when you kind of create a connection and a partnership between the learner, then yeah, give the learner a chance to speak about themselves as well. Make it so that it's not a kind of interrogative question, but you're actually asking for feedback, oh, I want to be able to do this. How can I do this? So instead of directly asking, how was the lesson, maybe ask, how, next time, what could we do? I need some ideas. So make it that the student feels like they need to, provide an answer, and maybe that will help. And with time, give it time. Don't force people to, answer, but I hope that helps.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, those cultural considerations are really important.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you talked about the levels of students, and of course, with this track, we're focusing on high-level ELL students. What tools do you use to assess what level students are at?
So when we conduct our intake and assessment, so there are two parts. The intake consists of an interview, and we fill out some forms, and from there it's a kind of informal assessment where we think that the language is at, and then we use a Pass Plus. It's a spoken adaptive test, and that will give us an idea of the level. There are other tests online that are similar to those adaptive tests. A lot of the time, when the learner and the tutor sit down, I heard it recently from one of our tutors, and they said, "Oh, my student can speak, they can read," and that was not an impression that I got. So when that stress is gone and they're talking with the tutor, that's when you really get a sense of their language capabilities. So you can use formal or informal testing, and a lot of the time we get our data from feedback from tutors, and not just on these computer adaptive tests.
Yeah, definitely important to use multiple measures to evaluate that. Good, thanks. In your, I believe it was in your second lesson plan that this next question came in. How long would you project lessons 1 and 2 take?
Sorry, lesson plan 2, but the activity 1 and 2.
I believe probably yes, activity as
Okay,
opposed to lessons.
so I mean, thinking about one of a learner that we have, I would probably make it last around 3 sessions. I feel like I could make it last around 3 sessions. Maybe when you get to the learner, they're like, "Oh, I find this kind of easy. Can we move on?" You'll need to change it. Again, it's a plan. I'd say 3 sessions. I think that one lesson with that amount of text, um, with either instructional plan, isn't enough to really, you know, delve into the material.
Mm-hmm. All right. In regard to feedback, what if your learner gets defensive unless she thought it was an area she recognized she needed help in? How do you deal with a defensive student?
Oh, I don't know if I've had defensive students. I mean, I'm not sure really. I mean, maybe making sure that, I'm not here to judge, or I'm not here to, it's not combative, it's just to offer advice. If anyone else can write in the chat, I've not actually had a defensive student. I don't know, truthfully. So if people could pop in the chat, that would be great. Maybe approach the topic of feedback at a later date. That's also fine. Don't be forcing conversations or anything like that. Just I can see Christy's posted in. There's obviously a reason for it. So
right.
yeah.
And those reasons are usually from outside the classroom or from past experience. Yeah, I like your approach there, Emma, to stay on the positive side, I'm here to help you, scale back that feedback if the student's not comfortable. I know in my experience, different students are comfortable with different things. Some want to be told every single time they make a mistake, and others, not so much. So yeah, really getting to know them like you had talked about. That's a great idea, and staying positive with it. All right, people can continue to put some responses to that into the chat, and we'll go on to the next question. Can you explain the importance of differentiating between long-term and short-term goals? Also, the fact that goals are constantly evolving.
Yeah, so I mean, how I try to view the goal. So a long-term goal, let's just use citizenship. I'm trying to obtain my citizenship. Well, okay, so a short-term goal, how are we going to do that? How can I make short-term goals that will reach that overarching goal? If a goal changes, that's absolutely fine, but we're just making sure that these goals are the SMART goals. They're specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, timely. I think I got all of them. But yeah, we're just goals can change. That's absolutely fine. But we're just making sure that a goal is not so big. So out of reach, where do you start? So you don't want to have a goal that you look at and you think, how do I plan for that? You want the learner to be taking control, advocating for themselves, and creating manageable shorter term goals that will help them achieve that one. If a goal changes because life changes, that's absolutely fine. And you can do the same thing, creating short, sizable, achievable goals.
Yeah, adaptability is important. Good. What was the name of the test that you mentioned? Was it the Best Plus that you mentioned?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you
All
want me to
right.
type it in or have you got that?
We can put that in there. Best
Okay.
Plus is one of the more formal assessments out there, NRS approved. There are others as well.
I
That
like it a lot.
it is a good one. Yeah. That is all of the questions from the Q&A. We've got a couple minutes if anyone has any last questions they want to put into the Q&A. Danielle, did we miss anything into the chat?
Yes, I did see one question posted from Linda. So her question was, can you suggest some resources or ideas for visual learning with higher level learners?
Yes, I would actually have students take photographs themselves. They're able to explain photography that they've taken. They're able to speak about lived experience, their personal experience at home, within their community. They can sort of achieve this kind of critical discussion if it's within a group session. I'm a really big advocate for, visual learning and using real life memory and imagery to really capture an experience for a learner. So definitely taking photographs. Using photographs from news is also really important. Obviously, be culturally sensitive. Don't be choosing material that may be upsetting or, prompts particular feelings, but you can have conversations around those kinds of things using day-to-day news articles and photographs.
Great.
That's a really important reminder there too. Thank you. All right, we are at the top of the hour, so we understand if some people need to sign off, get to class or other meetings. We have one more question that came in the Q&A, so we're going to stay and answer this. It will be included in the recording in case anyone needs to jump off. But our last question here is, how would you recommend measuring progress for a student with a goal of feeling more comfortable having conversations in social settings?
Can you repeat the question, please, Lauren?
Sure.
Thank you.
How would you recommend measuring progress for a student with a goal of feeling more comfortable having conversations in social settings?
Interesting. That's a hard one because social is very informal and there's no sort of right or wrong, is there? Maybe having the student be a part of different social settings, maybe putting themselves out there a little bit, and then they can sort of reflect and look back on, I did really well speaking about this topic in this social group, but maybe in a different social group where there isn't that comfortability, could be something worth working on. That's a really great point because that's like a desire, isn't it? But it's also a need as well to be, we're social animals, aren't we? So I would definitely say exposing a learner to having them, they would have to expose themselves to different social situations, understanding kind of like a social dynamic because they're all different. So it's quite hard to actually measure that, isn't it? But it could be something as simple as a reflection afterwards. I felt really confident when I was speaking about this, but I really struggled to talk about this thing that happened last week, and I couldn't really, you could look back on it that way, I would say,
Mm-hmm.
as a
Yeah.
reflective piece instead of, making it more formalized.
Right. Yeah, that is a tricky one because it's hard
Yeah.
to mimic all of those different social settings, but
Yeah.
challenging them to go experience them is a great
Right.
idea.
And you want to be authentic as well. You don't want to be sort of measuring your sort of social interactions with
Right.
people. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, role play only goes so far with that one. It's got to
Yeah.
get out there and test it. Great. That is all the questions that we have. Thank you so much, Emma, for your fantastic presentation. And thank you, everyone, for attending. Sign up for those coaching sessions. Look for that email following up with all these materials, the recording certificate for those who've attended, and the follow-up materials later this week. And we hope everyone has a great day. Thank you, everyone, for coming.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye, everyone.